like a Hellcat.
Before we get started, I have a favor. If you enjoy my content and want to see me continue to improve in both quality and size, please check out my Patreon linked in the description. Any amount helps and it is greatly appreciated. There are so many rewards for each level of donation, so go check it out. Now back to the video. Hey guys, this is Matt the EmeraldAvenger, and welcome back to Reworking Overwatch. As a part 2 to the previous DPS episode featuring the old defense class, today we're exploring the offense class. Before we begin, I have a few suggestions for general changes to characters, as well as a new set of changes to Mei, and a restate of my changes to Junkrat. First, I would like to partially revert the barrier nerfs to make room for my Junkrat change, as well as a few of the other hero changes that I'm making in this video. For Rhine, the barrier will now have 1,750 health, Sigma's barrier will have 1,000 health, and Arisa's will have 750. This increases just to make barriers a bit more durable against the potential anti-barrier damage that I'm adding. Next is Mei. First, change to her primary fire. Players will have a 3-second period after being unfrozen before they can be entirely frozen again, but they can still be slowed. Second, frozen players can no longer be headshot by Mei's primary fire. Third, players beyond the first target in the multi-freeze capability will be slowed at half the rate. Now to cryo freeze. Mei is way too survivable, so giving Ice Block 400 health instead of it being invincible will give the enemy a chance to prevent her from healing and sustain the fight. I think these changes to Mei will help to make her less frustrating of a hero to play against. In the last video I suggested a change to Junkrat's concussion mine that makes them deal extra damage to barriers, now between 25 and 30%. This was originally to counter double barrier meta, but since barriers are weaker, I decided to tune back the number from the original 50 I stated in the previous video. Now for the offense role, we start with Genji. With Genji, his damage and fragging capabilities are quite low because of the amount of healing in the game. I think a decent mechanical change would be for his Swift Strike and ultimate to apply a 10 to 15 DPS bleeding effect to enemies hit. This could work in several ways. One is the effect lasts a certain duration, maybe 4 seconds. Option 2, the effect remains until the player receives healing. This small mechanical change existed in Genji before the game was released, and I think if Blizzard were to revisit the idea, it could help with Genji's damage output and ability to get kills. Next is McCree. McCree's in an interesting spot in the meta. He used to be countered by barriers because his damage, of course, could not go through them. But now that the barriers are getting nerfed, he should fall back into place. His kit is strange in the fact that all of his abilities, Roll, Fan the Hammer, and Flashbang, are close range abilities, while his primary fire and ultimate are mid to long range abilities. This change will entirely address that, but it may push him in the proper direction. First, I would give him a passive, Stopping Power. Similar to Junkrat's primary fire, Junkrat's primary and secondary fire will do a very minor amount of knockback, less than half a meter. This would allow him to keep a slight amount more distance from his enemies while he was on cooldown than he normally would be able to. Next is a mechanical change attached to his combat roll. He was recently buffed to deal 50 damage per shot with Fan the Hammer, but I think this could go back ever so slightly much, to 45 or 48 damage. But to make up for this, Combat Roll will now apply a 30% damage boost for 2 seconds. It decreases in value at a rate of 15 per second. This will allow him to Combat Roll Fan the Hammer combo into barriers and tanks with a slight boost to damage, making him shred through anything that is in front of him. It would also affect his primary fire and ult if he timed it right. Now to Pharah, the first change is to an existing ability, Concussion Rocket. This suggestion will make it deal damage to barriers. If a direct hit, it would deal half the barrier's current health and damage, or at least 150 damage. But within its AoE, it would deal 25 to 125 damage. Since Pharah is still sort of being hard countered by barriers, this change will allow her to punish tanks who like to sit stationary behind their barriers. Next is an in-air horizontal movement ability. Rocket Dash, attached to her Concussion Rocket keybind, which is now moved to her secondary fire, which would be an 8-meter horizontal directional dash similar to Hanzo's Lunge. It would have a longer cooldown since it would make her more mobile and survivable in the air, however, maybe 7 to 9 seconds. Overall, I think these changes will work to buff Pharah against her 2 biggest counters, barriers and hit scans. Next is Reaper. Both of my possible suggestions share a change, which I will outline first. It is a change to Shadow Step that makes it more like a targeted leap, with a similar arc to Winston's rocket jump, but retaining Reaper's range. It will functionally work like a mix between Shadow Step and Wraith form. Reaper will target a location, but instead of disappearing, he goes into a half Wraith form, now being 50% damage resistant, and leap in an arc to his location at 25 to 30 meters per second. Upon landing at the location, he could release a small cloud of smoke to give him a getaway, but this isn't required. This would make it less predictable and easier to survive and not be a sitting duck after using Shadow Step. This next change could do one of two things. Reaper is weak versus armor, so I suggest giving him a corrosive grenade on his secondary fire, which will work similar to the ability we see in the Overwatch 2 missions seen at BlizzCon. It would increase the damage players take by 25%, or 50% versus armor, for the next 2 to 4 seconds. It would have a 3 meter splash radius and a 10-second cooldown. But Reaper would not be able to lifesteal entirely because the players are weakened, so a 25% reduction in lifesteal. Second possibility would have the same duration cooldown in AoE, but it would instead apply a 30 to 50% anti-heal to players hit. Either one of these could help to boost Reaper's capabilities in fighting against an armor or healing heavy meta. Up next we have Soldier 76. My suggestion to him is a passive, new ability, and anti-armor buff. First with the buff, his Helix rocket would gain an extra mechanical change that would make it deal 30% more damage to barriers. Quite straightforward. Now for his passive, we're going to move his sprint. It can be set to an interact key toggle style ability, whether he sprints while moving or not. He can stop sprinting by using an ability or pressing the interact key. If he does not want to sprint, he presses the interact key and will walk as normal. Now for a new ability to replace it, he will pull the pistol that he has in several of his skins out and fire a tracker at an enemy, which will reveal their location for 6 seconds to his team. This would be on a 12-second cooldown, similar to Sonar Arrow except a little less because it is a single target ability. Since Soldier 76 is supposed to be the bridge between FPS and MOBAs, and then Overwatch of course, giving him the Overwatch equivalent to a minimap in this form of a tracking ability would make him feel more user-friendly. All these changes would move him into a more prominent role in the meta. Now for Sombra, she's already a really powerful hero, however very situational. This small change to her primary fire could make her more effective against barriers. My change is to make her primary fire deal 15 to 25% more damage to barriers. An explanation for this could be her bullets are laced with an electrically charged iron or cobalt casing, which makes small EMP explosions where they hit, dealing extra damage to barriers. This is small, but it should be able to cement Sombra's role as a barrier counter. Last, but definitely not least, Tracer. If you couldn't tell, I don't like heroes missing abilities or missing passives. And well, Tracer is missing both. For a new ability attached to her secondary fire, Outburst. Tracer's accelerator would send out a burst of energy within a 3 meter radius, which deals 50 damage across 4 seconds. And for that 4-second duration, enemies have rate of fire and reload speed reduced by 25%. Those have a 10 to 12 second cooldown. This is to give her more damage and some utility since she is of course a DPS hero. Next for a passive, Ghost or Time Ghost. After recalling or blinking, she will have a 10% damage resistance for 1 second. This would probably have a larger cooldown, maybe 4 to 5 seconds. Just a small survivability boost, but not enough to make her unkillable. So what do you guys think? Do you think that these ideas are good, in the right direction, in the entirely wrong direction? And what do you think about my suggestions to the barrier changes in addition to my anti-barrier abilities? Feel free to tell me in the comment section below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Go follow me on all my socials. Keep updated with me off the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next one. This is EmeraldAvenger. Have a nice day. Stay safe. Peace out.